the way it started out is one of the members of PIBA came to me and says, listen, I really have this idea of buying a jet charter company because it's a field that I like. And so this is what I'd like to do. So my first question, of course, is what are your qualifications for that? What experience have you had in that field? And his answer was none. And the next question was, how much money do you have to work with to work through this process? And the answer was pretty much none. So the next question is, what else is it, right? Remember, in PIBA, we don't stop with those challenges. That's just the very beginning that helps to lay out the playing field. And then we want to fill in all the missing pieces to how we're going to do this. Because there is no such thing as you can't get there from here. Please write that down somewhere. There's no such thing as you can't get there from here. So wherever you are, you can get to where you want to go. You just have to put the right pieces together in the right order so that one builds on the next. And when you're done putting the pieces together, believe it or not, you're there. You're in position. You're ready. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we did there so you'll see how we filled in the pieces. So maybe before I do that, I should actually ask you to this one time raise your hand if you want to know this story. You want to know how we're putting all these pieces together. All right, I see one hand up. Let me see if there's any more. Come on, guys. I know you want to know the answer to this story, right? I want to see how many people have hands. Put it up if you want to know the story. All right. We got enough hands up to tell the story, but we don't have enough hands up to say that everybody there is awake. So I'm going to tell you the story anyway. All right. So here's what we're doing this. We have a person who doesn't know anything about the jet charter business except that they really want to be in the field and they would love to own a company like that. And we don't have a lot of money to work with, so now we got to put those things in place, right? So the first thing we did is I tasked that person with, you need a partner, okay? You need a partner, and you probably need two partners, okay? First partner you need is somebody who has incredible expertise in the jet charter business, because when you go to your lenders and when you go to your investors and when you go to all those folks, the first thing they're going to want to know is who's going to buy this company? What are your capacity in this company? What are your credentials? What's your track record? So you got to have a partner who knows this business inside and out, so you start to look good on paper when you apply for the resources that you're going to need to go out there and actually buy such a company. And so we did a little Q&A and we said, okay, who would be a qualified person to have as your partner? And what it came down to, I try not to tell people stuff at this point. I try to ask them questions that lead them to where it is that they understand what they need to have. And so it evolved that I guess I got to have as a partner somebody who is already an established person in this industry who has experience running a company. So we decided that somehow he had to have a COO that had run one of these companies at high level, that when anybody asked, do you guys know what you're doing? We could say with certainty, absolutely. So that was his task, to go out there and start building, in effect, his dream team of who's going to be on in his company that gives him the credibility, the credentials to buy this kind of company. So his task was, let's go out and find somebody who is already a CEO, or at the very least may have retired, but they had that position at in a substantive company that would be at least as big or bigger than the kind of company that I want to acquire. So that was his first task. The good news is, after a couple of weeks, he introduces me to his new partner and asked me for, of course, the normal help of, do I need an agreement with them? How are we going to get him involved? What are we going to offer him? All this. And so we structured out all that stuff. And we had a meeting with him. And it turns out this guy was a COO of a very substantive company. Okay. Company did, 150 to 200 million a year, and he's the chief operating officer. I have to tell you, I was a little bit amazed because I wasn't sure he was going to be able to attract that person to his infant attempt to go buy this company, go buy a company, because he didn't even know what company he was going to go after yet, because the first thing he wanted to do was put his team together. I spent some time with him and asking him those questions, and it turns out that he's just fearless, right? He says, this is what I got to do. He understood what the mission was. He spent a little time with me to fill in around the blanks that he really wasn't sure of. He got on the phone. He started looking through LinkedIn. He started looking through all of the resources that you would need in order to accomplish this putting together of a dream team, but this COO or CEO in particular. And the next thing you know, he has them now on a meeting with me. Now remember, he didn't try to sell himself as an expert, right? He doesn't try to say something he's not. He just says that he and his partner, who's his partner, right? Who's his partner? Me, right? Are looking for somebody who has this background and who would like to be part of the ownership of the companies that we're acquiring. Now, why is that magic? Okay. And here's what was true for the person who he contacted contacted. The person had every credential you can imagine. He knew the industry inside and out. His history was building this company that he was with from several million a year in revenue, which is where he came into it, to where it's now got 200 million. He knows this business inside and out. And what I was also amazed at, his value system was already very close to mine and this other individuals, which is the way you create wealth is you create value for other people. You be of service, right? He's very service oriented. And it turns out that was the reason that he was open to the approach to be the COO or CEO even of this acquisition company that we were going to put together, because he had a difference in values with all of the other partners of his business who were big on sales, and they had to be big on safety, because in that industry, you're regulated, and if you're handling the safety right, you're out of business. So they had to be big on the safety, but they were really big on sales. Customer service was a distant desire. Whereas his whole idea was twofold. One is he liked the idea of a company that was dedicated to making the customers raving fans, of building the business where the customer's experience was the key to the growth of the business. And that sales manifested itself out of the great service that they would deliver to their customers. So he was disenchanted to some extent with the company he worked with, to the point where he embraced the idea that we would work with him, bring him in as a partner, and empower him to run the company with the value system that he had. So you can see why at least we were attractive to him. So now all he had to do was to validate in his mind that we really had a chance to do this, that we could pull this off. And over a couple of meetings, most of which I handled, we convinced him the background for making acquisitions that I have is strong, that we have all the resources to do this, provided he has the ability to run such a company, which he knew he did. And over a couple of webinars that we had with him and the individual who's our member who brought him in, he got very comfortable, and we got very comfortable with him that we were good partners together. So that's the first thing we did, was to build up that cosmic bond, cement the values that we all shared, and to give him when he asked questions, what do I do about this and how would I handle that? Because he asked a lot of questions. I was able to give him very direct and very credible and useful answers. So anyway, we built this over a couple of weeks, and now what's the one thing we're still missing? It's an investor, right? But we're also missing something else. Remember my rabbit in the pot story? Okay, the first thing we had to do after we got our partner for running this was we had to do two things. Okay, one is we have to get a rabbit for our pot so we have something to go after, because it's very hard to sell an investor on backing you when they don't know what they're backing. So you got to have a rabbit so that everybody knows what they're going to go after. Then the investor can get his arms around, okay, I'm going to put up money, but I'm getting this. And this becomes very specific. And now we can do some kind of an evaluation of it, shows how we can give that investor a good return on their money. Remember, we got some great tools, business price calculator, doable deal analyzer. We can see how much cash flow is left over to give the investor for his investment. We can determine from the future profitability that we can pro forma or project on the company what that investor could earn. Okay, so those are our next two things that we have to go after. We're no sooner getting started with this person who knows every single jet charter company out there that's of any size or value. He knows them all. It's not that big an industry that these people wouldn't know each other. Of course, he's starting to make up the list. But what I'm also doing is I put out to my network what I'm doing and what it is that I'm looking to accomplish. So another gentleman that I work with, when I explained it to him, he had already introduced me to somebody years ago in the jet charter business. So he just reached out to that person, now knowing that I'm really going to put together a acquisition of a jet charter company. And he just reached out to him, and sure enough, that person knows of a jet charter company that's for sale. Okay. And all he would tell us about the company is, well, I can't tell you who it is until I have my agreements with you. So we gave him a non-circumvention agreement. We put all that part together for him. And then he would only tell us in the beginning that this company does approximately 100 million in sales. It operates 20 jets, and it makes 10 million a year in EBITDA, and a few other pertinent facts, just enough that we knew that even though those were rounded numbers so that we couldn't identify the specific company, that was going to be one that we would want to go after. So much for that. Right? So now we have a target company. Okay, he knows they're for sale. He's going to set up the introductions, but he won't set up the introduction until we have an ability to prove we have the money to buy it. He said to us, I brought these guys 2 other buyers for this company, one from the Middle East, one from someplace else. The deals all fell through because at the end, the folks didn't have the money. So what I need to know before I even introduce them to you, that you guys have the money. So based on the very few facts that he shared with us, I reached back into my contact base, and I have an investor who's done very well in the real estate multi-level multi-family residential real estate, and he's put together pretty close to $1 billion worth of properties. And when you have $1 billion worth of properties, listen to this, okay? When you have $1 billion worth of properties that you own, by that point you got some cash, right? You got some money. More importantly, he syndicates his deals, so he's an expert at raising money for his deals. He's already expressed an interest to me as a PIBA member, because he's also a PIBA, that he wanted to buy businesses that were in a different field, okay? But he also said, look, I'll work with you if you got a good opportunity in any field if it appeals to me. So think about this, okay? Okay, this is what's going on in my head, right? Think about this. I put myself in his place, and I said, okay, I own $1 billion worth of real estate. I own it in 5 different states, and I've got to travel to these states every time I will either have an appropriate maintenance issue, and he has professional management that handles all this stuff. Periodically, though, he has to go to these properties. And then certainly every time he has an opportunity to buy a new property, he only does deals in at the 100 million level and up. Every time he has to go to these properties to buy a property, he has to go to these properties, and they're all over the place. And at the end of the day, he's somebody who should own his own jet. Okay, he's got the money actually to do it. He's been considering it. So I said to him something along the lines of, why would you want to spend money to buy a jet when we can buy a jet company and not have to come up with any of our own cash? And his answer was, that's pretty cool. So he had an interest in jets. He'd been exploring the idea of buying, it's called a 550, Gulfstream 550, which is a 30 or 40 million aircraft. So far as I know, it's in that range. So why buy that for that kind of an investment when you can buy a company and have your jet anytime you want it? So that became a very good opportunity for him to want to consider that. So now the next thing to do was to introduce him to this particular company, which we have the opportunity to buy, which is this approximately $100 million company, approximately 20. They have 20 jets that they actually operate. And you see how the picture's starting to come together here? Okay, so the next thing that happened is we set up a meeting with the seller, and we went through this where this gentleman is now the source of our capital. Now, if a person has $1 billion of real estate where their net worth is 300 to 400 million net easily, okay, where their cash income per year runs into the millions, do you think we have any problem convincing the individual who said before he'll introduce us, the person has to have the money and we need proof of funds and all that kind of stuff? We had no problem now convincing them of that. So just this morning, we first of all, we had a meeting with the seller. It was a great meeting. And you know what I focused on, right? Because did I focus on numbers? I focused on building a cosmic bond with the seller. Even though the only way we had access to each other at the moment was over a webinar where we could see each other because we used the video cams. But it was basically, the whole meeting was done electronically. And what happened was in an hour and 40 minutes, we built the kind of cosmic bond that's required. We shared our values. We shared what we wanted to accomplish. I asked them the right questions, which is, what do you want to do? What do you want to be true for the company? How much of it do you want to sell? Do you want to stay involved? And then shared value systems and what we wanted to do with the company and how we were service oriented and how our goal is to make the user, the client, a raving fan of the company. At some point, this is all music to his ears because the other 2 folks he talked to who didn't in the end have the money, they were all about the money. When he talked to them, it was all about what was going to happen to the company. It was actually horrifying to him because that wasn't what he gave his heart and soul into to build up the company over the years that he's been developing this and creating it. So all of a sudden, he's talking to people he's starting to visualize as the right buyers for the company, who want to build it, not tear it down and break it up, who want to build it and build it not on the basis of what can you get out there in the marketplace, but what can you deliver in the way of value to the customer so that they want to be part of your growth, that they're loyal, that they want to use you versus the competition, that they want to use you even if you're a little more expensive because they value the level of service that you give. They value the experience that they have on your aircraft. So when you start looking at it like that, you can see how the cosmic bond was beginning to develop and how he began seeing us as a right buyer for the company. So this was only about less than a week ago that we had this. It was late in the week last week that we had the meeting. We signed mutual NDAs and that kind of thing. We have the financials just came in today, and I'm a little busy this week, but next week this weekend, I'll be diving into the financials so that we can work out how to structure the deal. Now, with aircraft, jet charter aircraft, you have a very leverageable asset. You can borrow a lot of money against a jet. There's a lot of opportunity that's going to be in this company for asset-based lending, for mezzanine level lending, for our partner that we brought in, who is now our money guy, who can make some investment of his own to commit to this. And by the way, if he was really going to buy a jet, which he was thinking about it, do you think he's already got money reserved somewhere for the down payment on his Gulfstream 550? Of course, you don't buy a plane like that without putting up cash. Now, yes, you can leverage the purchase of it because you finance the part that you don't buy, but portion of it, the point of it is he already has money allocated to buy a jet. Now, what if we take that money and use it as part of the money we buy this company? It leverages it a lot better for him. And then he also has this inventory of investors who continually invest in his properties. And part of his formula for that is he puts his people in for 3 to 5 years based on their investment. He gives them a cash on cash return while the money's tied up. The whole period is 3 to 5 years. And then the properties are sold off, and these people take their money, which they get back their original investment, plus a very substantial profit, probably 3/4 again to maybe double what they put in 3 to 5 years ago. And because they love the returns that they've been getting, most of them reinvest all that money back into the properties. That's part of how he's been building up this $1 billion worth of real estate. So at the end of the day, he not only has the sources of leverage that we already mentioned, he's got his own inventory of investors that he can now go to and say, here's the new opportunity. You've been investing with me in land. Now I'd like you to take some of that profit and invest it with me in this particular company, which is, let's say, a jet charter company. Now, can we take and offer his investors some fringe benefits if we own our own jets? Yeah, I think we can. Do you think the people who have gotten wealthy and made a lot of money and who are wealthy to start with and made more money with him, do you think they might be good candidates for a jet charter? Do you think he can bring a fair amount of those wealthy people that are now part of his investor group in as customers of the jet charter company, helping to build it even more? Yeah, see, you're starting to see what he sees as the logical reason to be part of this whole thing and why it makes so much sense to him. So you see what we did, we tapped into everybody we needed as a part of this process, looking at what their wants and needs were and looking at how this opportunity solved more than just a normal transaction for them. This is all about who they are. It's all about what they're trying to accomplish with their lives. It's all about how this acquisition makes it easier, faster, better than it would have been if this acquisition doesn't get made and they're not part of it. When you package things that way, and I use the word package in quotation marks, it's not like we put it in a bag and we put a label on it. It's like we tailor it, the approach to exactly the people that we need to do this. So hopefully you see the methodology and the strategy behind that. So now we got our company that we're now going to be seeking. What if that company now doesn't come through? It won't matter, because the very next meeting that I had with our COO guy, right, is who else is out. And we started to develop a list once we understood what exactly the size and type company we're going to be looking for, exactly what it is we wanted. He already has a list of at least 8 or 9 of companies that we should go after that are in the sweet spot of what we want. Right size, right everything. Okay. So if any reason this company doesn't close or we aren't able to acquire it, there are many more out there that we have. So now we've got a team, we've got an investor and a backer to this who has way more access to money than we need and who's highly motivated to be part of it, all for the right reasons, all for good, sound, solid reasons, all with the goal to go after not just this company, but to continue to build it by acquisition. So the next one will be that one will be the first, then there'll be a second, then there'll be a third. And all of the people involved in this now, also as part of their common thinking, believe it or not, each of our people's value system is go big or go home. So everybody that's part of this already is aligned on building this thing not only through internal growth and increasing sales, but also by growing it through acquisition externally. Now, what about my PIPA partner who brought me into this particular interest of his? Let's look at where he is in all of this. He's not going to end up in the normal PIPA equation where, remember, I work with people 80-20, right? So normally if it's just a straight out acquisition, no problem. My PIPA member gets 80% when it closes and I get 20%. And that's the way it works. When it's actually national diversified funding that gets it, because technically that's the way I structure it. But the point is, that's the normal deal. It can't be that way in this deal. Why? Because we got an investor coming up with huge amounts of money, both from himself personally and his inventory of investors. We're going to have lots of leverage financing in there as well. We're going to have the COO person's going to get a substantial piece of the company. That's his attractiveness to come over and be our party there. And we're going to, in all likelihood, hang on to the C that's selling the company because we want him there and he wants to be there for the future growth of the company. So we want to make sure there's enough equity spread around to everybody that everybody gets out of it what they want. So the deal defines itself after a while. You start out maybe with a certain goal, but after a while you start to see as the deal comes together that it defines itself. Now, the next step of this is to obviously put all of these pieces together. We will be drafting the usual letter of intent once we have evaluated the financials. So everything else from this point on takes the normal form of an acquisition. But I think the question I had asked is, what about the original person who brought this all together? We looked at what the right thing to do was with respect to how we want to distribute equity. It's not finalized yet, but everybody's on the same page. We know how value has to be distributed in order for it to work, how equity. But the other side of it is, what is he going to do in the company, right? Because he wants to be active in the company, but he has no background in aviation. The question comes up is, what's he going to do? And he says, look, the role that I would like to play is really in sales. What I'd like to do is to be responsible for at least some areas of sales of people who would then be users of the company. And then I asked him a key question. I said, what have you already proven that you can do? What have you already proven you can do when it comes to a jet charter? And we thought about it for a while. And he says, the main thing I did was bring in the CEO of the company, who was a major factor in getting this done. So I said to him, you comfortable talking to that CEO? You are obviously able to do that because you were able to build a rapport with the person. You were credible to that person. And now that you're all part of this, you're getting better educated on the jet charter business. Do you think you would have any problem reaching out to the owners of these companies, the other COOs, the other CEOs of these companies that are out there, and starting to talk to them about merging and partnering up and joining us, or at the very least, setting up meetings for me to meet with them? He says, no, he says, I could do that. And he can. He absolutely can. And so the key here is we now have for him a great opportunity doing something he's going to like doing in an area where he already has proven track record, in an area that he's comfortable and where he comes across credibly. And as he is part of this business, and this is a very young guy, by the way, so as he is part of this business over the next 3 to 5 years, his experience level will be way different in 3 to 5 years from now than it is today. And it will get up to the point where if he stays in the industry, he will be a credible person in the industry. So if he wants to do more on his own, if he wants to get to a point where he buys out my interest, or whatever it does, or if we get to the point where the company retires my interest, he will end up owning more and more of the company. So there's a plan in place for him to get everything he wants out of this. And that's the goal. We try to focus the deal at the end so that everybody we need to be part of this process is getting 100% of what's really important to them. They may not get everything that they thought they wanted, but when they really boil it down, the thing that they all realize is when they look at what their real desire is to accomplish with this transaction, that most important thing, those most important things to them is what the deal is structured around. So that's the story there. And before I go on to anything else, does anybody have any questions? And by the way, let me put everybody's hand down. So that way, if you have a question, you can raise your hand. And I want to see who actually has a question here. All right. Because I'm going to take hands up first. And then if I don't have hands up, I'll go to the question marks. All right. Let me just see here. Okay. I see a hand up. All right. And I'm going to open up your microphone, I think. So you're on self-mute, so I can't open up your microphone. This is Juliano, I think it is. Ahmed?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, how are you?
Hey, how are you? How you doing?
I'm good. How do you pronounce your first name?
Juliano.
Juliano. Okay, because if it was Mexican, I would have to say Juliano. So Juliano, very good. Yeah. So what is your question, Juliano?
The question is, okay, so I hear about this transaction you guys doing with the jet airlines. The question is, on the finance, do you guys go through a big bank where you guys put like a down payment and you get like a large amount, like something like SBA, or going to be, or how's it work with the financing, getting financing to do a purchase on this?
All right, great question. Great question. The purchase price on this company, when we did it, I can't, again, I have certain information I can give out, other I can't. So I can't tell you the exact earnings of this particular company, but it's
okay.
close to 100 million. Okay. And the EBITDA is 10 million. And these are folks who, at least asking price, say that they want 10 times EBITDA for the company. So that's 100, that would in effect be $100 million. Okay. So you're not going to borrow $100 million from the SBA. It's not going to happen. The question is, what are the sources of the money for that? Okay, when you buy any company, and especially a large one, there is something that you're going to want to, there's a terminology or words you're going to want to remember. It's called the capital stack, S-T-A-C-K, the capital stack. And what the capital stack is means at the end of the acquisition, where does all this money come from? Okay, at the very base of the capital stack, you have equity. Okay, you have people who put in money, cash, and take the major portion of the risk. In other words, they're primarily at risk. Then the next part of the equation is what's called maybe I should do it the other way around. At the very top of the stack, you have your secured lenders, which are usually banks and or asset-based lending companies, okay? They take as their security a lien on all of the assets of the company as collateral for their investment. That's where the majority of the money comes from. But you're going to leverage it beyond that, because in a deal of this size, based on the amount of equity that the people put up in the company, you're going to get what's called mezzanine financing. Mezzanine financing is fairly expensive money. It's not cheap, but it's not collateralized either. There's no security for it. And in deals this size, there's no such thing as personal guarantees. Okay. So one of the things people are afraid of in buy companies in small deals is you got to sign personally for the loans. Nobody signs personally for these loans. The deal stands behind, the company stands behind the debt. So if the company can't pay, the company can't pay. They can't go after you personally. So you've got your equity layer. Then based on your equity layer, you're going to get loans on both your assets, your secured lenders, your banks, your asset-based lenders. You're going to loan based with the assets on collateral. And then you're going to have a mezzanine group, which is going to come in and finance with no collateral, but their money costs are going to be high. They're going to be probably in the area on a deal like this of 7 or 8% interest. But then they're also going to want what's called an equity kicker. In other words, because they're taking risk, they want to know that they got a play on the equity value of the company. So these are all the factors that you would consider on a transaction like this. Now, when we come into this particular deal, we have two levels of investors. Okay, we have our money partner who can invest money of their own, but like everyone else, they're motivated to keep that minimal. And then he has his investor group where he customarily underwrites the property, meaning he evaluates it, shows what it can earn, projects out the cash flows, determines the returns he's going to offer to his investors, and investors come in with a certain expectation of cash on cash returns and an appreciation of their equity. And so this deal will be packaged in such a way where it's attractive to his investors to come up with a portion of the money that we don't get from all those other sources. So does that pretty much answer your question?
Very well. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yes, it does.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next question. Come on. That was great, by the way. Thank you for that. I really love it when folks come in with good verbal questions. And by the way, I'm going to put your hand down, but if you want to ask another question, just put it up. Okay. I don't know. We don't have another hand up here, so let's see what we got written. All right. We've got a bunch of written questions, so let me go through them. All right. Where is the SPV and operating corporation incorporating? We don't know that yet. It's a little too early, but for sure it won't be in California. It'll be in any state that the company operates in, because we don't want to go out. We want to have it at least in one of the states that they actually operate in. It will be, if they operate in those states, which I'm sure they do because I already talked to them, it'll either be Florida or California or Nevada. It could be Wyoming, but I don't know that they do much there. These are all states that have no state income tax. And that's where we would most likely incorporate this so that we don't have to worry as much as possible about paying state income tax. All right. And then it says, generally speaking, how much ownership will the entrepreneur be left with? Our estimate is probably around 10 to 11% right now. It could be a little higher. It could go as high as 15. It could go as low as 10, but that's where that will end up, which again is not a typical 80-20. Our entrepreneur gets 80% because there are too many other factors that we had to have in order to get a deal like this done. Now, if he were the person who was the CEO of a jet charter company, either now or in the past, and he had the credentials, then we could probably do the 80-20 deal because he would already have access himself to all of these other features. It would just be a matter then of know-how of how do you put it all together and getting the help negotiating it and putting it all together. So you're looking at two different ends of the spectrum. One is the person, in this case, who had no experience in the industry and no money at all to do it. And now without those two things, we're still putting it all together. Everything is what you come to the table with. And in business, that value add defines everything, and especially that's going to be the case if people are transparent and fair. Everybody's going to know how it's all put together, and it's going to be fair in order to come together. All right, next question is, I love the angle of approach towards building a team and balancing needs. Gordon, very good insight on how to make what you have work. Anyway, thank you, David, for the compliment. I appreciate that, but it's all about value. Who's bringing what to the table? How do you get everybody that you need at the table? How do you allocate everything so everybody is going to be happy with the result, and then you get everybody behind the wagon pushing, and you go through the mud and you come out the other with a wagon that goes where you want it to go. So that's part of the equation, if you will. When prospecting for sellers, did the entrepreneur work from home or did he lease an office from home office? Did that hurt his credibility? First of all, you're living in the age of COVID, which is a blessing to you because you can work out of your house and nobody thinks twice about it. Everybody I know right now is working out of their house. Everybody, from the wealthiest people to the most needy people, everybody's working out of their house because it's safe, it's easy, easy, it's convenient, and the world has now been programmed to be accepting of the fact that you work out of your house. And the whole nature of communication and credibility has been stood on its head by COVID. So you should actually be grateful that this thing came and hopefully will go soon so that it doesn't stick around. But it's been something that's really opened a lot of doors. So yeah, so the home thing is not a problem. Today, people work from their cell phones, so you can be working from your home, your car, while you're on vacation. It doesn't matter, okay? You just need to be you, know what you have to do, and do it. That's really what it comes down to. All right, the next question is, did the entrepreneur have a website, business card, and logo ready when he started? And the answer is no. Now, does it hurt to have those things? Of course not. The more you're prepared, the more you bring together all the issues of credibility, the more important it is for you. But you remember, okay, you'll hear me talk a lot about something called metaphysics, okay? A lot about metaphysics, right? And the answer to these things is your greatest strength is your greatest weakness, okay? Your greatest weakness is your greatest strength. What was our students, my PIPA, what was his greatest weakness? Because he didn't know anything about the industry and he didn't have any money, okay? That was his weakness. What we did is we turned that into his greatest strength, because now when he goes to that, what is it that it's going to attract that's to him is the fact that here is a guy who's got access to the other things, because we trained our guy how to go to him like, I have everything else but what you've got. In other words, I got the money, I've got everything, and then we're going to go after these companies, but I need what you have, all right? So we use his weakness to attract somebody with the strength to do it, okay? Then when we went to the money people, we were actually able to show them we not only had the guy who had the capable of running it, we have the guy or the company as our target, because now we had that to show him. And what we need is the guy with the money. So the fact that he didn't have the money is okay, because that's what the guy coming in is going to get out of the deal and put into the deal. So we turned his two weaknesses into strengths. Okay, it's just a matter of flipping the image and saying, okay, I don't have it. Who has it? You may remember this quote of mine. Okay, there's always somebody out there that has everything you want. Everything you want, somebody already has it, and they will give it to you. They will give it to you if you give them what they want. That is always true. It's not part-time true. It's always true. Everybody has stuff. Everybody wants stuff. Okay, how do you align the two? And that's part of what being an entrepreneur is, and how you get deals done and made. Okay, so that's those. Let me see if I got some more questions here. Yep, I do. You guys are getting good at questions now. This is great. All right, so did the entrepreneur have a website, business card? No. What about Texas for incorporating? I already answered that. The answer is yes. Great state to incorporate in, have no state tax, but you still have a problem because every state has different tax laws. Most of them are benign, but anytime you do business in California, California has what's called a unitary tax, which means based on the assets you keep in California and the business that you do in California, they're going to want a piece of your income as tax here in the state of California. Okay, it's one of the few states that has what's called this unitary tax system. So it's what makes California like a void state for a lot of people. All right, anyway, I don't want to get too deep into that. How important is it to form the entity before building the team? Not at all. Okay, you build the team before you have the entity. Okay, no problem with that, because the entity, naming the entity, all those things can come later. You've just got to make sure that you provided for your credibility when you do this. I have a little bit of an advantage when I do this, okay? And that's that I have a track record that goes back 50 plus years of acquisitions at a very high and successful level. And when I speak to people, you pretty much get it in the first 3 to 5 minutes you're talking with me that I know what I'm talking about, okay? So I don't have a credibility issue with virtually anybody that I talk with. Not everybody has that. So that's why I try to get everybody to think in terms of credibility. How do you make sure that you have the credibility that you need in building up these other things that people have been asking about, like business cards, entities? Those are things that you can do to start developing window dressing for the credibility that maybe you don't fully have. In my case, I don't worry about it because I can talk my way through any issue of credibility. Okay, now, do you have a program that I can come in and partner with you? Yeah, the answer is we do. It's called Partners in Business Acquisition. We have it on the Bazaar Financing website, and you can find, I think it's either under the About Us or the What We Do section. Anyway, it's in there. It's on. You can see it on the. If you go up to that navigation bar at the top, if you go to the far left, there's a different set of places you can go than if it's on the right. The right is the membership side, so you can get your services as members, and then the left is all the things we do, how we do it, what we have available, and it's in there. It's in there on that section. And and then if you have an interest, you can also email me. We can send you out an application for it. I obviously can't do this with hundreds of people, so I only take maybe a half a dozen to 8 or 10 people at the most, depending on how busy I am, into the program, because my level of of commitment to this is very high, and I invest a lot of time and energy into getting a deal done. But if you're interested in it, at the very least, send me an email and I'll get you the application for it. All right. If the entrepreneur has less than 51%, doesn't he run the risk of being squeezed out of the company? No. Okay. And the reason for that is, first of all, in 55 years of doing this, I've never allowed anybody who was a partner of mine ever to be squeezed out of anything. And when we set up these transactions, if we're going to have less than 51% in the hands of an entrepreneur, then we set it up so that there's a company that I control. That's an LLC. Then we have owners of the LLC be all of my partners. In that case, because everybody's been reduced down, I have it where I own 51% of the voting rights of the LLC, not 51% of the equity interest, okay, but 51% of the voting rights. So what we do is we have all the people from our side in on that. We've divided up the equity interest and the split of incomes and all that according to our agreement. I have 51% of the control, and that LLC is going to own 51% of the company, at least, okay, or at least 51% of the control. In other words, you can have Class A and B stocks. You can differentiate voting rights from equity ownership rights. So at the end of the day, we can structure a deal so everybody gets in money and profit and distributions, everything that they want. But we always structure it when we do these kinds of transactions where the LLC that we have in common has the control and I have the controlling voting in that. Now, that's not the same as when we do an 80-20 plan where the entrepreneur gets the control. Okay, so that's not that. But any other set of circumstances where that, like the one I'm talking about, where we have so much of it to divide up, we structure it so that we don't worry about the control, and I protect and take care of everybody. Okay, I now have a company that I want to target. Once I have an initial appointment, can I follow the acquisition plan? First meeting handout enclosed as I meet with the owner and build the cosmic bond for the first time. Any other inputs for the first time meeting greatly appreciated. Okay, I'm going to have to digest that question for a little bit here. Okay, so you have a company that you want to acquire. I assume you're meeting with the seller, you're building your cosmic bond. At some point, you're going to present to them a letter of intent, and that letter of intent is going to spell out the terms of the acquisition. Now, remember, we have many different kinds of acquisitions that we do here in Bizarre Financing. One of the most popular is what's referred to as a build-up buyout, and that's important because with a build-up buyout, even before I would give them a letter of intent, I would give them a business plan showing how we would work together in the build-up buyout to gradually over time buy him out. It shows that he stays in control of the business in the beginning, but then as we earn out more of the company by the values that we add, then it comes to a point where we buy out the rest of his interest and then we have control, and he may be left with a minority interest for some time into the future, but at some point it transitions control to us. So once I get them comfortable with the plan, then I send them the letter of intent that puts all of that down into a more formal language that makes it clear what we're going to do, and then that letter of intent becomes the basis of the definitive purchase agreement, which then is even more detailed and lays out more of the transaction and who gets what, when, and how, and what qualifies for what. Everything is laid out there. Okay, when will this webinar be posted? So much information to digest that my hand is developing carpal. I love it when we have folks on here with a sense of humor. I get accused of that all the time. People tell me my webinars are like drinking champagne through a fire hose, and so I do appreciate that, but if I don't move along with the information, and if I'm not complete about it, then I wouldn't be giving you good answers. And that's why we post these things eventually, because you can listen to them over and over again until you finally get out of it what you need to get. Okay, that answers that question. I heard you say that you should never buy a small business with an idea of taking a salary as if you're working a job. It's not a matter of not taking a salary. Of course, if you have a business, you want to take a salary because it's just part of the expense of the business, and it should be able to carry that and still make a profit. That's the whole idea. Okay, but the nature of a business is if you buy a company that's doing under $2 million a year in sales today, you're pretty much buying a job because you're going to have to do everything. You can't afford top management people. You got to go in and put out all the fires. The chances are it doesn't have systems and processes and the things that make a business scalable. So it's a lot of work and a lot of aggravation, and you're on the firing line all the time. When you buy a company of $10 million a year in sales and over, then you're buying a company that's probably got a management team. Probably the owner spends a lot of time not at the business, and that they're there really for policy making, decision making, and to stay in touch with the business and aligned with what its needs are, and making sure that those things happen, and then ultimately making sure they're getting reports that tell them that the top management that they've hired is actually getting the job done. And in between the $2 million company and the $10 million company is some form of in between on those things. If you're buying a $7 or $8 million company, you're probably mostly there, and anything 10 million or over is going to have that. Anything over 20, 25 million, the owner probably doesn't have to stick around to run the business at all. And certainly that's going to be true when you get over 50 to 100 million. But those those businesses, even at that size, may have an owner who can't be separated from the business. That they're the basis of the key relationships with the lenders, with the investors, with the government, the regulatory agency that could put them out of business if they didn't like them. All of those things you have to evaluate when you're looking into a business. But the reason I don't like small businesses, number one, this is the first problem you have with them, is that you're buying a job. The second problem you're having, it's hard to raise the money, because who gets excited about small amounts of money that can't give them very much of return, whether they're loaning it or investing it? If you go into a bank, they're going to want your personal guarantee. Even an asset-based lender is going to ask you for your personal guarantee. Whereas on the bigger purchases, you don't have any of that stuff. You don't have it. These are the reasons why the game really gets interesting when you get over the $10 million size company. And just because that sounds like a big number to you doesn't mean you shouldn't shoot for it. I just laid out for you a process today by which you build a dream team, and your problem is building the dream team. And then when you've got the dream team together, that brings in the investor. And when you've got the investors and you've got the target company and you got the dream team, then everybody's got tasks and assignments that they're fully capable of. And now arranging any of the resources that you need to do this just a whole lot easier. And when everybody has done the transaction and it's completed, there's a big win in there for everybody. So everybody's highly motivated to work with you and get this done. So I've given you all the logic for it, and hopefully it makes sense for you. Now, I don't see Demon Dennis' hand up anymore. I don't know if you still want to talk about any of the things we have here. One of those questions.
Okay,
I can hear you now. Yeah.
This is right.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm great. Listen, I'm a big fan of yours. I go all the way back, and but I had gotten your tapes a while ago, but they're on cassette. So that's how far back you're going back with me. But anyways.
Well, that puts you in your 60s.
Well, I'm in my 40s. I was a young guy when I got your tapes, and I've been hooked on you ever since. But listen, I know you talk about credibility and getting the credibility and all those things. But my question to you is, and I know the way that you present yourself and the way that you have conducted yourself all these transactions, but has there ever been a transaction or ever time that you was a little bit hesitant in dealing with a deal? I know you got experience, but has there ever been a time where you find yourself out of your comfort zone?
That's a great question. I'll start with the last part. Do I ever find myself out of my comfort zone? Not for long. Okay. I'm out of my comfort zone usually when I'm first looking at this company and I'm not sure what's going on with it yet, because I don't have enough information to really put everything in the right perspective. That usually dissipates very quickly, because the minute I start digging into this, I know that. I've seen that before. I know how this works out. I know how I've handled that in the past. This is new for me, but it's similar to what else I did over here, which I know how to handle that. I've had enough experience by now that I very quickly get everything in the right perspective. Don't let fear stop you from anything. If I go back to when I was more of a novice in this, and that takes me back into the late 1970s. I had many a day when I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. I was very uncomfortable about the possibilities. I thought, gee, maybe I'm in over my head. But here's what cured me of that. Okay, what cured me of that is a couple of huge mistakes, okay, that I made. And what happened is the deal didn't happen, money got lost, bad things happened in terms of deals. But at the end of the day, I could get up from the deal and I could walk away. I could brush myself off. My scars healed quickly. I was right back in the game for the next deal. Okay. And once I did that a couple of times, it occurred to me, there's nothing to be afraid of. Okay. I'm not going to die. I might be embarrassed. I might have to work my way out of a hole. I might look foolish, but at the end of the day, I always walked away. And a week later, I was back at it again. So hopefully that makes sense to you. It's an attitude thing. All right. The other thing I do is I don't look at what I do as being real. The minute you look at things as real assets, real liabilities, real anything, and I can lose, that's the beginning of fear. Okay, if you look at this not as any of those things, but as a game, if you play Monopoly, okay, you have fun, right? You're taking over control of this part of the board, that part of the board. You lose some money, you don't care. It's paper money, right? It's just no big deal. All right, and at the end of the game, you win or lose the game, but you had fun along the way, and you didn't have any fear because it wasn't real money. At some point in this, you get yourself to that mindset of it's a big game. Life is a game, okay, and you're going to play it. Sometimes you're going to get hurt, and you're going to have a boo, and you're going to need a bandage, right? And maybe your arm's going to be in a sling, but at the end of the day, you're born and you die, and all in between is a game. Okay. And if you look at it that way, that helps to expunge the fear that holds you back in life. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just your tonality, the way your words. It's just your words are so gravitating that when you listen to you, you're like, this guy know what he's talking about. Even if you don't have any idea, just, you know what, this guy, he's on to something. Or it's just the way that, and I think that's, at least for me personally, I can't speak for nobody else, of course, but that's what kind of draws me into you. Is your tonality, is the way that you use your words, the way that you position your words, the way that you deliver your
yourself. It's your delivery. So again, I know you've been doing this for a while, you know what I mean? But it's like for those of us who are new, who are see a business for say $1 million or $2 million or whatever the case is, you're right. You got to build that team, get the credibility, which of course is going to be a factor. At least starting off, like you said, if you build that team and you got a team behind you of knowledgeable individuals, then it gives you a little more confidence to move in a certain direction. And I think honestly, I think that's the initial least step that I think a lot of people, including myself, is that you get intimidated by some of the things that you see and you become paralyzed on some levels.
I got an exercise for you. Okay. More than situations, people get intimidated by people, right? It's the people that you got to deal with that really create the intimidation. So here's a suggestion for you, and don't crack up now. Okay. Don't crack up. But if you really want to get rid of people intimidating you, as you're talking to them, just picture them sitting across from you naked. Okay. Just picture that. Okay. They stop being intimidating immediately.
True. That is true. That is very true.
Okay. As long as you're picturing them as these are the experts, they're the guys who know, I don't really know anything, then they can intimidate you. Okay. But if you realize they're just people, Look, you turn on the television. You really want to have some fun, just for fun. I don't know if do you watch either MNBC or Fox? Do you watch either one of those two stations?
Yes, I watch MSNBC.
Okay. Do you ever notice how sometimes these people say things and then a week later they were totally wrong? Okay. And sometimes they admit it and sometimes they don't. Okay. And that some of the things they say are absolutely ridiculous. Now, I don't know anybody on either one of those two channels that I would agree with 100% of the time. So whenever they're talking about something that I say, this is crazy, there's no way that's true. There's no way that's the case. What I'm saying to myself is the people who are supposed to be experts aren't really experts. I used to go on a lot of TV shows when I was younger in the seminar business, when I was giving these events all over the country. And my PR people got me booked on a lot of talk radio and TV shows. I met a lot of these people in the green rooms, okay? They're idiots. I'm telling you, they're idiots. When you talk to them, especially about anything outside their immediate field, they don't know anything more than an average person, period. And even in their field, you know how they got to be an expert? If they said on air the same things that everybody else was saying, would they be considered an expert? And the answer is no, because if you're going to become on a radio or TV show, they want to know you have something unique to tell people. If you're going to say the same thing everybody knows, why do they need you to come on and say that? So you position yourself as being an expert by coming at things with a little different perspective than other people, and it doesn't mean that perspective is right. So what happens is you have people who hold themselves out as experts, and the only thing they're an expert at is holding themselves out as an expert. I lost my fear of experts. I lost my faith, frankly, in experts way back in the late because I found that they were no smarter than the average bear. At the end of the day, they had all the same problems, the same physical ailments, the same mental anguish, the same everything that every human being on the planet has. And that in most cases, their expertise still comes from a limited perspective. And maybe except that very exact perspective, they really don't know that much. If you look at the predictions, okay, end of the year, all of these experts make predictions. Have some fun sometime. Write them down, the predictions. See how many of them actually come to pass. On the other hand, write down the things that happen where there are people out there that hold themselves out as experts. And look how many of them say, I didn't anticipate that. I didn't see that coming. I didn't know that was going to happen. I never knew so-and-so would do that. That's where they come from, okay? Expunge from your mind that experts are any different than ordinary people. Get a sense that you are as good as anybody out there. And whatever you decide to truly specialize in, what you tend to decide to really focus on, you have the opportunity to very quickly be as strong as anybody else out there in that thing, okay? And that fear and intimidation is at the most a temporary inconvenience. You're going to get by it really quickly. Hopefully that helps.
No, it does. And I'm not going to hold you up. I know you want to talk. I want to hear about some of the other opportunities that you say you're involved in, but I really do. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay because we're out of the time already. But if you like this, if you like this, I'll make this our next topic. I'll talk about more of the things I'm doing, why I'm doing them, how I'm doing them, how you can do them too. So let me see a show of hands. How many people want me to do that?
Oh, I would love for you.
Yeah, put your hand up. I want to see, get a sense of how many people want to do that. Oh, wow. This is the best hand pop up I've seen in a long time. So that's great. Yeah, all right. I will do that. Next time out, that's exactly what we're going to do. All right, let me see if I can knock off the rest of these questions here because we got a bunch that I still haven't answered. I heard you say you should never buy a smoke. Okay, that was okay. Let me shut your microphone off, Demon. By the way, do I say that right, Demond?
It's Demond.
Yeah, all right.
It's Demond.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. And again, thank you for the great question. All right. Okay. When will the next round of webinar uploads take place? Okay. We're a little bit behind on that. I'm going to blame it on COVID because everybody blames everything on COVID, but we're getting them edited and we'll get them up there. Is there any way that we are able to connect with other like-minded members that are present on the webinar, either by everyone sharing their LinkedIn profiles by chat? There's actually some very good reasons that we actually don't do that. And sometime I'll explain them to you. I'll explain them to you right now. We used to do that and we made it very clear for everybody to get in touch with everybody. And what happened happened was one of them would upgrade from Bazaar Financing Essentials to Bazaar Financing Pro. And then that group that they then had access to, they'd go back and share theirs with them so that they didn't have to upgrade to Pro themselves. So it just got too costly for us to do that. So we've decided not to do it. But at the Pro level, we do things like that because they're already our Pro member. And so we're able to do it at that level. So hopefully that makes sense. Is there a way? Okay. I love the dialogue that is taking place on this webinar. Great. Thank you for that. Hands and feet up, Gordon, yet more of what you're working on. All right. Great. I love it. I love it. All right. Again, I can always very quickly speak authoritatively on what I'm doing because I'm doing it. It makes it real easy. That's really good. Hopefully this was very helpful to everybody today. This was probably more questions than we've had on these for a very long time. I think maybe we struck a chord here, and I'll definitely try to do much more of this type of thing, because if I can involve you at this kind of active level, it's going to enhance your learning experience. You're going to learn a lot more as you mentally and physically get more involved in our conversations. So again, what I'd like to do is to thank everybody for your incredible participation today. I'd like to remind you that we have one of these webinars. Essentials is always the fourth Wednesday of the month. Pro is always the second Wednesday of the month. So until then, have a great business experience, and I'll look forward to seeing you all then.